Okay.
Hey, we're recording.
We're recording. Okay, perfect. All right, we'll jump into it. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for spending a beautiful Sunday midday hanging out with the Marine Mammal Center. We'll keep it informal, obviously, so I'll customize this to the questions you have, the stories you have. So at any point in time, if there's something that you want to know more about or you have a burning question coming into this, let me know. I've got some slides that I'll walk through, mostly just because if I'm going to talk about seals and sea lions, I'm going to show you really adorable photos while I do it. But again, we'll make this kind of what is most helpful to all of you. Before we jump into it, I'm just curious. So how many of you have heard of the Marine Mammal Center before? Everybody. Perfect. How many of you have actually visited the Marine Mammal Center? Okay. So we're based in the Marin Headlands at Sausalito. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then how many of you have interacted with the Marine Mammal Center? So called or done something where you've talked with us? So almost everything. All right, excellent. So I'll start with just a couple brief details, just to set the stage, make sure everyone's familiar with what the Marine Mammal Center is, what we do, and then I want to tell you specific stories as we go through. A little bit of background before I start talking about the animals, just about myself. So my name is Adam Ratner. I'm the Associate Director of Conservation Education at the Marine Mammal Center, which is an extraordinarily long title to say that I work with our staff, our volunteers, and community partners all around the world in taking the stories of seals and sea lions and how we then create solutions to the threats they face. So things like climate change, ocean trash, overfishing. How do we learn from these animals to help create a healthy ocean for both marine mammals and people alike? And I've been at the Marine Mammal Center now for coming up on 15 years. I'm in a wide variety of roles. My background before the Marine Mammal Center was as a marine biologist. So I was more in kind of the lab and out on boats, really studying animal behavior. How do these animals respond to noises? How do they learn? Things along those lines. And I studied things like fish, I studied birds, and really settled on marine mammals because they are so just captivating. You think about, Will was telling a story earlier about seeing a harbor seal and just the eyes and how it kind of brings you in immediately. You have a connection with some of these animals. You think about animals like blue whales, the largest animal to ever roam the planet. There's something pretty special and captivating and awe-inspiring about these animals. Fascinatingly though, we know so little about these animals. So the blue whale, the largest animal on the entire planet, they're bigger than 3 school buses, back to back to back. When I started at the Marine Mammal Center 14 years ago, I asked one of the best blue whale biologists in the entire world what I thought was an incredibly simple question. Because we can see blue whales off our coast. Every summer, you can go out whale watching right along the California coast, you can see blue whales. But we don't see young blue whales. So I asked, where are the babies? Where are blue whales born? And the best blue whale biologist in the world, 14 years ago, could not tell me that answer. They're 100 feet long, the size of a basketball court. And they're an endangered species. But yet we didn't even know where they spent part of their lives. That's what got me interested in marine mammals. Yeah. Because how do we take care of these animals if we don't know where they are and how they behave? So I found the Marine Mammal Center. Not only are we able to start answering some of those questions, but we're saving animals that are getting sick at the same time. So I'm going to take a quick pause because it looks like we're going to grab a couple extra chairs. Come on in, make yourselves comfortable. You only missed the first few minutes where I explained who I am. Short story, I'm Adam. All right. Perfect. And as people are kind of gathering, I had done just a quick poll for those that were here a few minutes ago. Just by show of hands, anyone who just joined not heard of the Marine Mammal Center before? Is it completely new and novel to you? Okay, one person. And for the folks, because you all kind of grouped right over here, so you're making this very easy for me to pay attention. How many of you have interacted with the Marine Mammal Center before? So called about an animal, visited the Marine Mammal Center? Okay, a couple of you. Perfect. All right, excellent. Well, I shared just a little bit about myself. I'm happy to answer more questions, and we've got still a pretty kind of intimate group here, so I want to customize this, ask as many questions as you have, but we'll start looking at some really cute pictures while I'm talking at least. All right, the short story for the Marine Mammal Center. We're a global leader in ocean conservation, and we do it through a few different themes and kind of areas of work. So we do it through rescue and rehabilitation. So if there's a sick or hurt marine mammal, we're gonna go out, we're gonna rescue them, bring it to our hospital, get it better. Day it feels better is the day it goes back out into the wild again. We're gonna do it through research. Let's try and figure out why these animals are getting sick, how we can get them better. And we're gonna do it through education, making sure that we're taking everything that we learn and helping to empower and inspire people to take action so that we can create this healthy ocean for marine mammals and people alike. We also happen to be the world's largest marine mammal hospital. So as we think about the scale and scope of our work, we rescue more sick and injured seals, sea lions, whales, dolphins, otters than any other group around the world. The main hospital is in Sausalito. So just around 50 or so minutes from here. You have the chance to actually visit our hospital. You can see the patients that we're taking care of and see our volunteers and veterinarians working with the animals. Come on in, grab a seat, folks. Welcome. But our work stretches well beyond just our hospital in Sausalito. So we rescue and respond to sick and injured animals from 600 miles of California coastline. So it's from the very top of Mendocino County in the north to the very bottom of San Luis Obispo County in the south. So whether it's you decide to head out to the lagoon in a few minutes after this talk is done and you see a harbor seal that's sick or hurt, or you're heading down towards Monterey and you're looking out and you notice that a sea lion's got a piece of trash caught around its neck. We're gonna be the group that's there to help support with those animals. We also actually have a hospital out in Hawaii. We are celebrating our 10th anniversary of actually opening up a hospital in Hawaii, where we took everything we've learned over the last 50 years in California and brought it to the animal that needed it the most endangered seal or sea lion in the United States, called the Hawaiian monk seal. And I'll talk a little bit about that animal. I also just want to draw attention to a few things that you see underneath the response range, and that's the people. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the animals today and showing you cute pictures of animals because you don't necessarily want to see the pictures of the people. You want to see the harbor seal like you all oohed and awed a few moments ago on that last picture. But it's the people that really make this work happen. So we're a nonprofit. We run entirely off of donations, and it's only because of the support from the community we're able to do this work. So I'm one of the few staff, relatively speaking, when you think about the scale and scope of the work you're going to hear about. Every picture that I show you is essentially a volunteer, though. We have 1,300 of them. They do everything. They do all the feedings of the patients, the rescues of sick and injured animals, bless you. They do education work. They support our research efforts. They start at age 15. They go up to age 97. We don't even cut it off at 97. So it gives you an idea of what allows us to do so much of this work that you're going to hear about today. So let's start with the very beginning part of the story, and that's the rescue. So I mentioned we're the world's largest marine mammal hospital, but a sick, hurt seal or sea lion isn't just gonna kind of bring itself to Sausalito and check itself into a room. We rely on people like you. You are our first responders. You are our eyes and ears. So if you do see an animal that's sick or hurt, let's take maybe a harbor seal that has a piece of plastic caught around its neck that you see just right off the wharf road here. Get on the phone, give us a call. We have a 24-hour hotline that allows us to ask some questions, figure out where you are, what you're looking at. If the animal needs rescue, we'll send a team out there. We're gonna evaluate it. Sometimes they're just up on the beach, just taking a little bit of a rest, and that's okay too. But if the animal needs our help, we'll rescue it, bring it to the hospital, get it better. We'll do this with whales as well, except as you might imagine, a 45-foot humpback whale does not fit particularly well on the back of a Ford F-150. So we'll make a house call. We'll go out to them and actually disentangle whales that find themselves in trouble along our California coast. We'll bring it to our hospital in the Marin Headlands. So all the animals, all the way from San Luis Obispo all the way up to Mendocino, are all gonna come to that main headquarters and hospital in Sausalito. and we're going to be able to get them better. Any test you can get at a human hospital, x-rays, surgeries, brain scans, you name it, we'll be able to do that. We'll get the animal better. The day they feel better is the day they go back out to the wild happy and healthy again. And it all varies depending on what's happening out in the ocean, but we might rescue anywhere from around 600 animals up to around 2,000 animals every single year. And again, every single one of those starts with a phone call from someone like you out on the beach that sees an animal that needs help. So that is one of the most important things to keep in mind. You are part of this story. You have a role to play as our eyes and ears to help us give these animals a second chance in life. The work, though, goes well beyond the rescue and rehab and release, though. Because at a certain point, I don't want to just keep rescuing sick and injured animals. I want them to stop getting sick in the first place. And that's where things like research are so vitally important. Learning from these animals about the health of the ocean. So whether it's things like in our laboratory, identifying the diagnoses that these animals have. We were the first to discover cancer in California sea lions around 30 years ago. Turns out that sea lions have the highest rate of cancer of any wild animal population in the entire world. And it is only seen in California sea lions right off our coastline here. Well, what does that tell us about the health of the ocean? These animals eat the same food that we do. They swim in the same water that we do. Well, now there are definitely some connections to human health. What about endangered species like the Guadalupe fur seal here? And we'll talk a little bit more about that particular animal. How do we make sure that the animals that need the most help can get that support? And what about the big guys, like the whales? And you are probably familiar with a gray whale just, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, that washed up here in Bolinas. We'll talk a little bit about that story as well. And then the education week. Did you want?
No, it's okay.
Okay. It's a small enough group. I'm happy to customize.
It's really okay.
All right. The last piece is education. Our goal was to create that next generation of scientists and students. So we're a teaching hospital. So we're training and teaching that next generation of veterinarians and veterinary technicians and marine biologists. So people from all around the world will come and train with us, learn the skills of how to do surgeries on marine mammals, how to rescue and set up a hospital, and go back to different parts of the country or the world to set up systems of their own. We've trained people in South Korea. We've trained people in Ecuador. We've trained people all over the world how to do this work because we all share the same ocean. And that way we can help better understand all of the threats facing them. We're teaching and providing inspiration and empowerment to students. So whether it's through school tours and people can come and visit us in Sausalito, it's free admission. So you can come walk around our hospital and see the animals we're taking care of. Today we've got just over 100 patients that we're taking care of. I was there literally yesterday, and if you stand up on our viewing platform and you look out, you're looking at around 85 baby elephant seals that we've rescued over the last month and a half. Learn why they're getting sick. What do they do along our coast that makes it so special? And learn how we can all take action and create a healthy place for them as well the day they go back out to the wild. I encourage you to learn more, engage with us. We've got programs virtually, or you can come and see us in Sausalito. And if you know anyone who wants to volunteer with us, whether it's youth in high school or whether it's adults, we've got an opportunity available for you.
So when you say Sausalito, you mean the Marin Head?
I do. I use them interchangeably. Just to make sure. Yeah. There is not something in Sausalito, but they are all together. We are right near Rodeo Beach. We're up the hill from Rodeo Beach. So a beautiful day if you want to actually go out and do hikes, join us for a tour, enjoy what we have to offer in this particular area. I want to show you just a quick video here because I've mentioned already a few different types of animals that we take care of, things like seals and sea lions. So I want to show you just what last year looked like for us in terms of what we were rescuing and rehabilitating, and then I'm going to dive deeper into all of their stories as well. But take a look at what we rescued just last year. Yay, sure. Hopefully the volume's okay. I think the speaker just turned up because we hadn't used it. We set it up like 20 minutes before the thing. But did volume okay? There will be a few other videos. Okay, otherwise I can climb up here and just press the power button on that if needed. All right. So what I want to do for you today, I'm going to answer all the questions you have, but I wanted to tell you 6 stories to kind of set the stage for it. So I want to tell you the stories of Sienna, Zare, Foxy, Snaggle, C727, and Meliana. Every patient gets a name. Every patient has a story to share. It's actually the person typically that finds the animal out on the beach, that reporting party that gets to help us name it. The catch is that we have now responded to and rescued around 25,000 marine mammals, and every animal essentially has to get a different name. So you gotta be really creative in how we go about doing this work. But let's start with Sienna. So I'm curious, in this room, anyone familiar with this story? A couple people. All right. So this is an animal picked up like a few blocks away, not far from here. Very, very young baby harbor seal. And this is the animal that you tend to see out here. These are the ones that are in the lagoon, swimming around, spotted animals. You can tell harbor seals really easily because they're really the only spotted seal or sea lion you're gonna find out on the beach. If it's not a Dalmatian, you're looking at these guys. Now, this is a young pup. We could actually age this animal pretty easily because of the presence of an umbilical cord. Okay, that's how young we're talking. And we tend to see a lot of young animals. There are a couple seats here in the front row if you want. We can also move some chairs around. Don't make yourselves comfortable. So this is an animal that had been spotted, and a few different folks, I think multiple people in this room right now, saw this animal. And unfortunately, things weren't quite right. So the animal was by itself. That's gonna be worrisome. This is an animal less than 7 days old. It should be with its mom. They spend around 1 month with mom. They're out swimming, moving around. Mom will also leave the pup to go find food and come back. But if mom's not around in this situation, something is potentially wrong here. We also know that this animal was kind of interacting a lot with people. Sometimes on its own accord and coming up to people. Other times being approached and actually physically handled by people as well. Now, we don't know the full story of what happened at the very beginning with Sienna. All we know is what we get from those phone calls. So we don't know, did this animal get separated from mom naturally? And then people saw this animal and tried to help it. They wanted to help, so they picked it up and they put it on their surfboard and they brought it back to land. Or did the animal come up onto the surfboard on its own volition? We don't know. What we do know is most likely, at some point, the situation became untenable for the mom, in that this was really scary. These big people are very close to me and my baby, and the mom wound up splitting and abandoning that pup. So now you have this less than 7-day-old pup that can't eat on its own, is already pretty underweight, and it desperately needs help. So people got on the phone, they gave us a call. We sent teams out, and surprisingly, the animal was a pretty feisty little guy, where we got out the first time, and the animal kind of saw us and looked, and then turned around and went right back into the water and swam away. That happens. That's not necessarily a bad thing a lot of the times. It means it's strong enough and wild enough to take care of itself. But we kept getting more phone calls, and it kept popping up in people's arms, and it kept popping up on people's surfboards, and we knew that this animal desperately needed our help. And after the, I think, 3rd rescue, perhaps, we were able to get our hands on it and bring it back to the hospital. Most important thing when we think about these animals is what is happening around it, and how can we best support the natural elements. So how do we make sure that if that animal is out on the beach, we give it the best possible chance? So I recommend don't get too close. I know that they are adorable. I know that their eyes are just calling to you. And they make arguably the most ridiculously adorable sound that you can imagine. It sounds like they're calling out for mom. Keep your distance. Get on the phone, give us a call. It's a 24-hour hotline where you can talk to someone and let us know what you're looking at. Are there other people around? So is this a very stressful situation for the animal? Are there dogs that are off leash? Because dogs and seals don't always get along. And we unfortunately see seals coming in with dog bite wounds a lot. Do we see any kind of clues about this animal for how big or how old it is? Do we see an umbilical cord? Do we see things like a fluffy white coat that means that maybe they were born prematurely? This is, again, where you are our eyes and ears. You are our first line of defense. Let us know, keep your distance, and help others keep their distance as well. And if we identify that this animal needs help, we'll get out there and put together a rescue.
So is Lanugo the fluffy white?
Correct, yeah, so you can start to see the spots forming here. But what we call Lanugo is basically it's like an unborn fur coat type of thing. So all mammals are born with kind of this little hair fur. For the really, really, really young ones, they've got this kind of thick lanugo that's going to help just generate warmth. Harbor seals should have that gone and already have their spots by the day they're born. Elephant seals actually keep it for a month after being born, so there's a little bit of a difference there. But yeah, what we're going to ask are a few different things. So we're going to ask, where are you? Who's around you? Are there other seals? Are there people? Are there dogs? Are there birds? Let us know the situation. Then we're going to say, what do you notice? Do you notice spots? Yes or no? If you say no, maybe this isn't a harbor seal then. Okay, that's going to help us better understand what's going on. It's also going to help us understand what equipment we need to send. It's a very different story going out to rescue a 14-pound harbor seal pup than it is a 400-pound California sea lion. We're going to need some more people. We're going to need a bigger boat type of situation. So that's going to be something. Do we see ears? That's going to help us tell the difference between a seal or a sea lion. Sea lions have ear flaps, just like we do. Seals, little tiny ear holes, actually. Do we see long or short front flippers? Those are going to be a difference between seals and sea lions. So all different things that we can use to help understand what's going on. Let's say we identify that animal needs help, though. Let's get it. Let's bring it to the hospital and start taking care of it. So you can see one of our veterinarians, Dr. Carr, doing an admit exam. The same thing that's going to happen when you go to the doctor's office. We're going to listen to the heart and lungs. We're going to take measurements. We're going to take blood samples. We have a state-of-the-art laboratory in Sausalito that allows us to run all these blood tests just like you could get as a Kaiser Permanente. And within 24 hours, we've got a full diagnosis for this animal for how we need to get it better. And then we've got different areas that we can start taking care of them. With the harbor seals, we tend to see these really young ones. We tend to see animals that are only a few days old because they get separated from mom too easily. They're just really skittish. So even though mom might leave that pup out on the beach to go find some food, she's typically always within eyesight of it. And what's going to happen is if they see someone come up to that baby, they view it as a really dangerous situation and they might not come back then. If a dog is off leash, this is too dangerous, I can't risk this, and the pup becomes abandoned. So most of these cases are really well-intentioned people that want to help that abandoned pup. Turns out it wasn't abandoned. You getting too close was actually the thing that abandoned. And that's heartbreaking and no one wants that. But that's why, keep your distance. Give us a call. Let us walk through that situation with you. Figure out what's best for them. The good news, even an animal that's a few days old, we can take care of. We got a neonatal unit. We've got indoor and outdoor pools. Any test that you could get that human hospital, we're going to do for them. In the case of these really young ones, most important thing is food and nutrients for them because they should be drinking milk from their mom, just like any baby. So what do we need to do? We don't have any mom seals around, and giving them a baby bottle won't really work. They would drink from it if we trained them to drink from it, but then they don't really have wild instincts anymore. So what we do is we make them essentially a fish smoothie, where we're gonna take some fish, we're gonna grind it up, we're gonna mix it with some salmon oil, make it nice and fatty. I'm sure that helps with the taste. Mix in some water, maybe some powdered milk, blend it all together, and then we'll actually pump it directly into them. We've got this kind of tube and syringe where we can get that food directly into their stomach. So trained volunteers that are gonna give them the food they need. Then we're gonna teach them how to eat fish. In this situation, this is the very first step where we just are putting fish in the water and seeing if the animals chase after it or not. Eventually, we can move up to putting them on strings, kind of drag the fish around in the pool, and the animals are gonna start to figure out, oh, fish is food, and I can't eat a fish this direction. All the important life skills for a harbor seal. And over time, they realize, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is fantastic. Now I'm going to start eating fish on my own. I'm going to start eating fish and stealing fish from all my pen mates as well. That's what we want to see. We even put things like enrichment in these pools. So whether it's fake kelp, this is actually the same stuff that car wash stuff is made out of, those little foam things. We've got little feeder boxes, so we'll bury fish underneath rocks. This is gonna help them keep those natural instincts so that the day they go back out to the wild is the day they're able to really thrive out in the wild. In the case of Sienna, paired her with a few other animals, similar size, similar age, similar stories. Took her in 2.5 months through that process. So got those fish smoothies, went through fish school, started stealing fish from her pen mates, and then this is actually her going back home. Hey. Nice little butterball, exactly what we want to see. And you might notice there's that little orange thing on her back flipper. And that's like a hospital bracelet in the form of an ear piercing. Stays with them their entire lives. And that way, if we ever spot them again, we know they're doing okay. We don't always spot the animals again. And keep in mind, that's actually a really good thing because it means that a hospital did not get alerted of an animal out on the beach. We have seen animals just like Sienna, though, that were respotted. Animals at less than 7 days old that we taught how to swim, how to eat, how to fish, all the things. And we've seen them go on to have pups of their own and teach their pups how to swim and how to eat and how to fish on their own. So we know that these animals get a true second chance out in the wild. All right, so quick repeat of just the most important things for harbor seals, the ones that you're gonna see the most. The way you can help us the most is just keeping your distance and being our eyes and ears and being a microphone for this message. Again, most people don't wanna hurt these animals. They wanna help them. They're just not always helping them in the right way. Help us help them. All right, let's move on to another story. Right now at the hospital, we've got 12 harbor seals, just like Sienna we're taking care of. We've got a lot more elephant seals. We've got over 85 elephant seals that we're taking care of. Now, there's one actually not currently at the hospital. This is an animal that we've already taken care of just so I can walk you through the full story. But this is gonna be very similar to what you're seeing today if you come and visit the Marine Mammal Center. In the case of Zare, picked up not too far from here, Agate Beach, so kind of the part of Point Reyes National Seashore area. People were walking along the beach, they saw this animal and realized, okay, something's not great here. Something's not quite right. Now, what they noticed is that this animal looked like it had some cuts and scrapes and scars here. It looked like it had been through kind of a washing machine a little bit. It was also making crazy sounds. It sounded like it was screaming. So people knew, don't get too close. Keep your distance, get on the phone, give us a call. We got a team out there. We kind of knew immediately what was going on. We were able to age this animal at 1 to 2 months because of those cuts and scrapes, which actually aren't cuts and scrapes. It's 2 different types of fur. So I mentioned that the elephant seals keep a coat of fur for their first month, that lanugo, that's kind of thick and black. They're gonna shed it or molt it between 1 to 2 months old. This guy's right between that. So you've got some of the new and some of the old right here. So we knew this is an animal 1 to 2 months old. We also knew at 67 pounds, this animal is miserably skinny and needed help immediately to be able to survive. So we brought the animal back to the hospital and we identified that this was 2 things, very similar to Sienna actually, malnutrition and maternal separation. This is an animal that did not get enough milk from its mom and was very underweight. Luckily, that's treatable. We know the beginning parts of the story for a lot of these animals. Breeding is very seasonal. So all the harbor seals are born basically March, April, May. That's why we know so many of these young ones are getting sick in months like April and May, like we have right now. Elephant seals a little bit earlier. This is a winter species. So they're gonna come up on the beach in December. They're gonna have their pups January, February, and they're gonna spend basically 1 month with mom. These are big babies. The moment they are born, they are 4 feet and 75 pounds. So just to give you a sense of scale, would you mind helping me out for a second? You don't want to? It's okay if you don't want to. Okay. To give you a sense, so 4 feet and 75 pounds, that is basically the size of a 3rd grader. I'm gonna let that just settle in for the ladies in the group for a quick moment. Now, they're gonna be born 4 feet, 75 pounds. Immediately at birth, they're gonna basically go face to face with their mom, and they're gonna talk to each other and they're gonna smell each other. Because that mom and pup bond is so important. They need to stay together for that full 1 month. How many people have heard elephant seals before or seen them in the wild? A fair amount of you. So I want to just play a sound here so you can get a sense of it. So this is the baby. That's the mom. Now, I mentioned that the people that called us were distraught out on the beach. They were like, this animal is screaming in pain. And I do not want to discredit the feelings that that family had out on the beach. But we knew those were actually normal sounds. Elephant seals just sound like evil chickens. And they've become really famous for it, actually. So people that have made a wide variety of Hollywood movies have actually come to the hospital in Sausalito and recorded the sounds of our baby elephant seals. So if you've seen any of the Jurassic Park movies, if you've seen any of the Lord of the Rings movies, if you've seen any How to Train Your Dragon movies, the voices of the orcs, the velociraptors, and the baby dragons, baby elephant seals from our hospital. So you can keep that in mind next time you watch any of those movies. Now, you also imagine what it's like if you come and visit us sometime soon. We've got 85 baby elephant seals we're taking care of. It sounds like we're being invaded by orcs. Now, they're gonna spend that 1 month on these crowded beaches, spending time with mom, drinking their mom's milk. And every day they spend with their mom, they're gonna gain 8 pounds. So in 1 month, they're gonna go from 4 feet, 75 pounds to 300 pounds. A 1-month-old baby elephant seal weighs more than most NFL football players. But then mom leaves, and she doesn't come back. This is a pup that has never been in the water before, so it does not know how to swim. It has never even seen a fish. It has done nothing but lie on the beach drinking its mom's milk for 28 straight days. They gotta figure it out all on their own. And what's stunning is they do.
Yes.
They figure out how to swim, how to eat, how to be wild elephant seals, and how to go on the longest migration of any mammal in the world without any support whatsoever. They go from California up to Alaska and back twice each year.
Whoa.
But it's all because they've got that great head start. Mom might only spend 1 month with them, but boy, did she set them up for success. So they're gonna burn through a lot of that weight as they learn how to do this. Problem is, if you didn't get up to 300 pounds, you don't have a lot of luxury to take your time learning how to be a wild elephant seal. So we're getting phone calls of people out on the beach that see this little guy when they should be seeing this one.
Yeah.
If you remember, Zaire, spotted, we could tell between 1 and 2 months old because of that fur was changing, was 67 pounds. They're born at 75. So that's an animal below birth weight and close to 250 pounds underweight. That's what we have 85 of at the hospital right now. Now, luckily, this is treatable. Same way that we treat the harbor seals. Fish milkshake, fish school, until they're a giant butterball and able to go back out into the wild again. Now the question starts to come though, why are we seeing so many of them? We know with the harbor seals a lot of the time, particularly within this part of our range, Marin, Sonoma County, a lot of it is human interaction for the harbor seals. People getting too close, dogs off leash. For the elephant seals, we don't see as many people around because they're born on breeding grounds. So they're born at places like Point Reyes or Año Nuevo down in San Mateo. So when we see so many of these elephant seals getting separated from mom, it gives us clues that maybe it's something happening in the environment that's changing. And that's certainly part of the case with the elephant seals. Things like climate change, sea level rise, and storm surge. With climate change, the basic way to understand this is we burn fossil fuels, so whether it's coal, oil, methane gas, we're releasing carbon dioxide into the air. And that's acting like a big heat-trapping blanket. It warms the air, the land, and the sea. And sea level rise is because of that extra warmth. Warm water simply expands, and that warm air will help melt ice. What we then get is the potential for increased storm surge. If the sea is taller, waves can now get farther up the beach. So how many of you have been out to Point Reyes before and seen elephant seals at Chimney Rock? Most of you. Excellent. You can kind of picture it here in this room. Let's say you've got the ocean right over here. Over there, you've got that big rock cliff that goes up around 200 feet. And right where you are all of the baby elephant seals. If the ocean is rising, that's going to shrink the beach. Storm surge, though, means that we're starting at a higher point. And those waves can now get even further. Probably not a great metaphor, but the best one I can come up with is I'm 5'8" on the best of days. I have come to the conclusion I am never going to dunk a basketball. But if you raise the floor, I can jump higher. That's storm surge. And what's happening in some of these beaches at Point Reyes is that storm surge and sea level rise is now so big that that water that started way over there and gave you all of this beautiful space is hitting that wall. There's no space left. It's not like they can go further left. There is literally a cliff there. So these big storms, like what we saw in January, and we're seeing more intense storms because of climate change, are playing a big role shrinking the breeding spaces for these animals. Año Nuevo, seeing a similar situation. You can see just the difference. So what happens if we actually address climate change? We reduce our use of fossil fuels versus what we don't. You see so much more water taking over these breeding grounds. That's why we can actually play a role in this story. There's so much that we can do. At the Marine Mammal Center, we do a few different things. I'm trying to bring people together because I don't want you to feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders and that you as an individual need to address and solve climate change. Come together and join others. We're not waiting for science to save us. There are a lot of ways to get involved. And we try and help the educators, the communicators, these sectors feel like they can build capacity to do it. So whether it's groups like the Climate Literacy Collaborative, where we're amplifying solutions for educators and communicators through different webinars and toolkits and resources, or whether it's through NOKI, the National Network for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation, where we actually brought together all the climate scientists, we brought together all of the social psychologists as well, and we scientifically tested how to talk about climate change and identified that there are different ways to tell that story that can help people better understand it and help set up people for success. And over the last 10 years with that National Network for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation, we've actually seen a change in the national conversation on climate change to be more hopeful, more solutions-focused, and more positive. We're training literally millions of people around the world in how to talk about climate change, and all those resources are available to people like you as well through our website. All right, we've talked about elephant seals. We've talked about elephant seals, or harbor seals and elephant seals. I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about some other species, though, like California sea lions. This is fox seal. This is an animal that was actually spotted a little bit farther away. I've given you two Marin-based stories. This one's down in Monterey, and a family was walking along the beach, and they saw this animal, and they realized, okay, something's not quite right here, because this animal was kind of flopping around a little bit. It was shaking. It looked like the animal was having a seizure. So they got on the phone, they gave us a call, and seizures are not okay. That's not a good thing. So we knew this animal needed help. We brought the animal to the hospital, and we identified that this is an animal that was suffering from a toxin, something called domoic acid toxicosis. Luckily, it's treatable, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute. But after around 2 weeks, that's all it took. This is an animal that went back home. So sometimes we see these really young pups that are separated from their moms. Other times we see adults that are facing different threats, diseases, and illnesses. Now, with domoic acid toxicosis, how many people have heard of this before? I'm seeing a few nods. Okay. Yeah, with crabs, excellent. How many people have heard of red tide before? That's a different thing. A few more hands went up. So red tide is what a lot of the media and newspaper will call any harmful algal bloom. A lot of the times it will turn the water red. Domoic acid turns the water green, so it's not quite the same thing, but same concept. So this is where you've got a toxin that's kind of housed in an algae. So algae is great, ocean plants. They give us around half the air we breathe up on land. Trees tend to get all the credit, but it's really these little tiny phytoplankton and algae that give us most of our air. Algae's great, but if you get too much of some algae, maybe because the water's too warm, or there's fertilizer that's in the water, all of a sudden those algae can release toxins. And fish eat them, and now they have a toxin. And then animals like sea lions eat the toxic fish, and now they have a lot of the toxin. And as it builds up the food chain, it can cause problems. For domoic acid, it affects the brain, kind of like the memory and GPS system called the hippocampus, and it causes seizures, just like epilepsy. If it's caught in time, though, it's treatable. And this is something we were the first to discover back in 1998. Our researchers, bless their hearts, started looking at not just what is the problem and figuring out that we can give them anti-seizure medications, and we can give them fluids, and we can get them better. But they took a step back and asked, how are they getting it? And pretty quickly, they started to realize something. They're getting it from eating toxic fish. Well, we like to eat the same food as seals and sea lions. So we eat salmon, we eat tuna. Some people are really weird and eat anchovies. So we're all connected. And it turns out that around 10 years before this, in the 1980s, people were dying after eating shellfish. There was this mysterious kind of die-off and people getting really sick. And our researchers, with others, were able to put this story together and realize that this is a really big story for how we might be able to actually learn from seals and sea lions to help keep people safe. We had a canary in the coal mine. We had an early warning system to an unhealthy ocean. Now, this is a complicated story, and what we use with this information falls in 2 different camps. I'm going to talk about how we use it to save people, but we also use it to help inform people of what's happening out on the beaches when we see these animals that are sick and seizing out on the beach. And I've now talked for a really long time about this issue, but it's complicated. It affects the inside of an animal's body. It is part of a food chain that you can't see. How do we teach about this? Whether that's scientists or whether that's students, whether that's adults.
Can you show that slide again?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So what we wanted to do is we wanted to tackle this in 2 ways. The first piece was the education piece. And it's a really complicated abstract concept, and I happened to stumble across an opportunity where I was talking with someone around this issue. It was while volunteering, actually. It was like 2 in the morning with a bunch of harbor seals. And someone was asking about some of the things we do. And I was explaining it to them, and they said, well, have you ever tried making videos about it? I said, yeah, but like, A, I'm not very good at making videos, and B, it's all of the stuff that we can't see. She said, well, what about something like animation, where you can kind of create whatever you want out of it? I said, well, that's great, but I can't draw, and I can't do animation. And she giggled a little bit and said, well, I work at Pixar. And I said, you're now my best friend, and I'm never letting you leave this building. And it turns out that we actually paired up with the California College of the Arts and created a course for budding animation students to help us create scientific animations so that we could raise awareness about this issue. This is what they came up with. don't quite go belly up. That was artistic license.
Sea lions eat upwards of 100 fish a day.
Whoa, how can you eat that many pizza rolls?
When sea lions eat a lot of fish poisoned by domoic acid, it causes them to get really sick. The domoic acid will attack the sea lion's heart, weakening the heartbeat. It will also attack the brain. In serious cases, the domoic acid even causes part of a sea lion's brain to shrink. This causes the sea lion to act dizzy and disoriented. No. It's important you call the Marine Mammal Center.
Hello, the Marine Mammal Center.
Yes, we found a sick sea lion on the beach.
Okay, the rescue team is being dispatched. Keep everyone away from the animal.
Kyle, sea lions are wild animals. They can bite.
Huh?
The Marine Mammal Center is committed to take care of all marine mammal news. When an animal is stranded or is in need, always call. This way, teams from the center pick up the sea lion and care for it at its excellent facility. And as soon as it feels better, they release it back into the wild, where the sea lions can live happy and healthy lives. Yeah.
So we tried to increase awareness. This is something we see along our coast. How do we teach this? How do we bring people into the story? But then we also need to take it one step further and think about, well, how do we protect people from the issue as well? Because if we're eating toxic fish, that's incredibly dangerous. So we started working with groups like the California Department of Public Health, where when we rescued a sea lion that came in with domoic acid toxicosis, we got on the phone, we let them know, and they were able to start testing or shutting down the fisheries to make sure that that toxic food was never making it to market. Well, 20 years after we've discovered it and started working with them, there hasn't been a single case of domoic acid toxicosis in people. So we know that not only can we help save the sea lions like Foxy, we can actually prevent people from getting sick at the same time. I find one of the most fascinating parts of this as well is the issue it causes. It affects that part of the brain, the hippocampus, causes seizures. It's only seen in one other issue, medical issue, that affects people, and it's temporal lobe epilepsy in people. So we actually work with Stanford Medicine to better understand temporal lobe epilepsy in people by rescuing sea lions with domoic acid toxicosis. It just goes to show how interconnected we really are. All right, last couple stories. This one, obviously, a lot clearer issue as to what we're dealing with. Someone saw this animal clearly caught in plastic trash, got on the phone, gave us a call. This was not too far from here, Seadrift Beach. Luckily, it's treatable. So we brought the animal to the hospital, we cut that piece of trash loose, we did surgery. Animal had some other issues, was malnourished, anemic. Not surprising if you've got this young, 1-year-old animal that's dragging around a big heavy net around its neck. But very much treatable, give it the care that it needs, and there's around 2 months worth of rehabilitation time for it. Now this is what we call a Guadalupe fur seal. How many people have heard of Guadalupe fur seals before? A lot less hands than some of the other questions I've done. This is an animal that very few people have ever had a chance to see, and just doesn't come up in conversations very much. And the reason for that is they're a threatened species, so there just aren't that many of them. And they're what we call pelagic, which means they spend all of their time out in the middle of the open ocean. They don't come up onto the mainland. So you shouldn't see one. If you see one up on Seadrift Beach, whether it's got a net around it or not, something's probably wrong. So give us a call and let us know. Now, this is the story of Snapple, so you can see what happened through the whole process. Now, this is a threatened species, and one that we're seeing more and more of needing our help with each passing year. We've been around now for coming up on our 50th anniversary in 2025. And if you look, we actually have rescued more Guadalupe fur seals in the last 5 years than the previous 40. So this, again, gives us clues to what's happening out in the wild. What are some of the dangers these animals are facing? Luckily, the population's been increasing, so we know that that is a good sign for them, and maybe why we're seeing a few more of them with each and every year. But is there a trend? Is there a pattern to these rescues that can help us create policies that actually protect them? And it turns out that most of the animals are coming in for one of two reasons. Either they're 1 year old and they're really, really skinny, struggling to find food, or they're coming in caught in trash. Those are things that we can help in our daily lives make a big difference on. So whether it's things like thinking about how we get our seafood, if we do eat seafood. Seafood is incredibly protein rich. Billions of people around the world depend on seafood. And there are really good ways that we can get it, and there are really harmful ways. So using tools, whether it's Seafood Watch or other kind of certification programs to identify the sustainability, buying local actually makes a big difference. A lot of the seafood that we buy in stores actually isn't coming from the United States. We import over 85% of the seafood we eat. We've got really strong protections here in the United States. Supporting local fishers makes a huge difference. Thinking about plastic. Almost all of the entanglements that we see with our animals are some form of plastic. Every time we can reduce our use of plastic, we're not only creating a healthy ocean and getting rid of these entanglements, it actually also addresses climate change because plastic is petroleum. Simple things, whether it's the utensils we bring, whether it's the bottles and bags that we use, what I encourage you to do is think about how you can bring others in on that story. People at your work or your business, people in your community. How can we help shift the system so it's not always up to you to try and remember to bring that bag? How do we make sustainability the default? And you've got power by talking to your favorite restaurants, talking to your coworkers, talking to your classmates, your sports teams. That's how we can create change on all of these issues. We also took the opportunity with Guadalupe fur seals to better understand, just like that story I mentioned with the blue whales, we don't know where some of these animals even go. 2015 was the first year we saw those numbers really spike that you might have noticed in that graph. Prior to that, there were only 3 cases in history of people following these animals to understand where they go. If you looked at the best textbooks, it said, where did Guadalupe fur seals spend their time? They said, probably Guadalupe Island in Mexico. There's a reason they have their name. And there were certainly a ton of fur seals down there. But the 3 animals that they had tagged just spent time swimming around that island. So you would think, best way to help Guadalupe fur seals is protect that island. This is not a US issue. This is not anything that California can really do. Mexico needs to protect that island, and we're gonna save the Guadalupe fur seals. Well, we rescued, I think, 33 animals in 2015, and we realized we got them better. Let's put satellite tags. Let's put a tracker on them and follow them and see where they go. And like anyone would in that situation, all of our scientists, marine biologists came together and we took bets. And we said, all right, where are they gonna go? And everyone's like, they're gonna go back to Guadalupe Island, obviously. No, not even close. They went north. Almost every single one of them went north. We found them off of British Columbia. We found them off of Washington State. We found them off of California. We found them off of Oregon. Eventually, they went to Guadalupe Island. It's where they have their babies. But that is not where they spend most of their time. They spend most of their time right off our coast. And that is where they're struggling to find food or where they're getting caught in trash. So we can help inform policies through the research that we're doing. In just the last few years, you see some of these numbers. We went down to Guadalupe Island and we tracked wild ones as well. Prior to 2015, only 3 Guadalupe fur seals had ever been tracked. Since then, we've tracked around 65 of them. That's the beauty of the opportunity with a hospital, with a scientific mission. that it's not about that one animal. We saved Snaggle, and we brought Snaggle back out to the wild and let him go. But what Snaggle taught us is helping that entire threatened population now get better. I saw your hand go up.
How do they sleep when they're so far offshore?
There's actually something in Washington Post and National Geographic that came out just, I think, 2 days ago around elephant seals and sleep. And it's very similar. So elephant seals, Guadalupe fur seals, they spend almost their entire lives in the middle of the open ocean, 250 to 300 days. The other thing for all marine mammals is what we call voluntary breathers. That is a fancy way of saying they have to think about breathing. When you go home tonight and you go to bed, you're not going to think about breathing. You're going to think about whatever you want to think about, but it's certainly not going to be as dull as breathing. But you're going to wake up the next morning just fine. Guadalupe fur seals, elephant seals, they can't do that. They have to always be thinking about breathing. So the way they do it is they turn half their brain off at a time. Left side of the brain, nap time. Right side of the brain, let's go find some food. Let's go hunt. Let's dive wherever we need to go. Truly an amazing adaptation. With elephant seals, they actually can dive down 5,000 feet. They can hold their breath for 2 hours at a time. And when they've looked at the map of how they move through the water, it actually looks like a falling leaf a lot of the time for the elephant seals. So they're taking that descent as a nap time for half their brain, and the other half is saying, hey, like, don't get caught in something, like, keep breathing, all the necessary details. Yeah?
We've known that cetaceans like whales and dolphins do that for a while now, but is that new information that
It's not, and I'll be honest, the thing that came out in the Washington Post, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, and I think someone at Marine Mammal Center is quoted in that article. I do not know the details of that study. I have not had time to even read it yet, but I got it sent to me by like 14 different people, as you might imagine. Yeah. Yeah, my guess is that they identified some new things, but the general concept of this kind of bi-hemispheric brain that they can kind of transfer skills between the two has been something we've known for a couple of decades, I want to say. Yeah. All right, keep thinking of questions. Definitely want to answer as many questions. I've got 2 last stories for you though. I wanted to talk about whales. So this is the story that probably all of you have heard about, seen, been a part of. This happened, I think, 3 weeks ago, maybe at this point, but time is a little bit of a blur.
I'll look it up.
You have a gray whale that washed up on the beach, unfortunately already deceased. Now, we work with live animals. We want to get them healthy, get them back out into the wild. That doesn't mean there isn't value in studying animals that pass away, and particularly with the whales that we just don't know very much about. These are treasure troves of information. The same way that we put those trackers on the Guadalupe fur seal, the same way that we're studying things like climate change and elephant seals, all of this is really important. So people got on the phone.
It was March 23rd.
23rd. So almost a full month ago at this point. Time is really a blur. I would have guessed it was 2 weeks ago. I had to actually put money on it. So people got on the phone. They gave us a call. And for dead animals, we partner with the California Academy of Sciences, and we're going to do an animal autopsy, what we call a necropsy. And we're going to take samples from it, and we're essentially going to do CSI. We're going to try and figure out why that animal died. So we're going to look at, are there cuts, are there scrapes? We're going to take blood samples or tissue samples if we can. Turns out with this animal, there were some very obvious issues. This animal had broken bones throughout its body. This is an animal that's 35 feet long. There's not a lot of stuff that can break a bone on it. No other animal can break a bone on it, but a boat can. And that's what we tend to see with these big guys. Unfortunately, this particular gray whale is one of many that we've seen, not the first in Bolinas as well. This is something that started a few years back, what we call an unusual mortality event, a drastic increase in the number of sick or dying marine mammals out there. You can see some of the numbers here. It started in 2019, and between Mexico, the US, and Canada, we've seen huge numbers. In the US alone, it's over 200 gray whales that have washed up in the last 4 years or so. Historical average around 30 a year or so. We looked at the population numbers. They just came out within the last year. In the last 3 years, we've seen the gray whale population drop by over 25%. So, as you might imagine, we want to figure out why. And each animal, like that one in Bolinas, is a major clue to that. Yeah?
So, on the last slide, I registered what it said besides what essentially you figure is not for strong on the ship story. Severe malnutrition, so is there any speculation that, well, it was starving to death so it couldn't, like, get out of the weight when it needed to, that kind of thing?
Great observation. It's as if I planted you. So all of the gray whales that you saw in these charts, the hundreds of gray whales, have all been one of two things: malnutrition or ship stress. And I think it is very easy for us to all blame ships in this. It is the default option, I think. But the ships haven't changed where they're going. We have shipping lanes that have existed for decades. Why, in the last 4 years, is it all of a sudden the ships are doing terrible things? Why are they malnourished? That's different, though. So what we started doing is started looking at not just what is happening here in San Francisco Bay, where we're seeing these animals get hit, but what's happening before they get into San Francisco Bay that might be setting them up for trouble. Turns out that gray whales have a huge migration. They go from Mexico, where they have their babies, up to their favorite restaurant up in Alaska in the Arctic, and then back again each year. So we have a great chance to actually watch these animals migrating right along our coast. You can get out to Point Reyes, January, February, April, May, and see gray whales. It's an amazing opportunity. But it turns out that researchers down there were noticing that the last few years, the gray whales were showing up to Mexico skinny. Okay, so that means there's a problem with their favorite restaurant up in Alaska. They're not finding enough food. Well, we know that the Arctic is warming 3 times faster than every other part of the world. And that's going to change the ice levels and the food levels that are up there. Gray whales depend on that. They're literally eating during those few months to stock up for the rest of the year. And if they can't find enough food at their favorite restaurant and they're skinny, they're coming down to Mexico, they're not eating down there, they're having their calves, and then they got to get all the way back to their favorite restaurant. Well, San Francisco Bay is kind of the point where they run out of gas. And they realize, I can't go any farther. I need to find food. So they're coming into San Francisco Bay, and they're coming into new areas in desperate search for food. Luckily, San Francisco Bay has food. It's not typically the gray whale feeding grounds, but it can do the trick. But it's also one of the busiest shipping ports around the world. The boats were never used to this. All of a sudden, the gray whales are showing up in the way of the boats more than anything else. That's not to say we can't address the boats. And we've got some great programs, basically a stoplight system that we've got with boats where we can actually track where all of the whales are, send out notifications that say, hey, big, giant cargo ship, there is a whale in the area, slow down. And a lot of boats are doing that voluntarily. We're working on shipping speed mandates so that boats automatically start slowing down, all these things. But we also got to address the food situation. And again, that ties back to the same issues with domoic acid and warming water temperatures, storm surge and the elephant seals, thinking about ways we can reduce the use of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and methane gas. Yeah?
Does it wreck the boats when they smash into a whale?
Sadly, typically no. I mean, and I say that not that the boat should suffer, but it's actually that you can't tell. So we've seen these giant cargo ships. I mean, if you've seen them go under the Golden Gate Bridge, I mean, these things can fit, I think, the entire Empire State Building on them. They sometimes come in with the whale still on the ship. They don't know even. So it makes it really hard to understand where they even were when the whale was struck. And we don't know how many whales are struck that we never see. That's a big question for the researchers. We have the whale in Bolinas that showed up. How many never washed up on shore in the first place, though? So this is just a bare minimum of how many whales are getting sick. Yeah?
And a great food depends on algae that attaches to ice.
Mm-hmm.
What are these folks that are running out of gas finding in the bay?
So there are lots of different types of what we call zooplanktons. So typically the gray whales will eat what we call mysids or amphipods. There are amphipods and mysids in San Francisco Bay as well. Yeah. So we kind of talked a little bit. They're now coming up into different areas. All right, last story. I want to take you out to Hawaii because what I've spent the bulk of this time doing is telling you about stories in our own backyard in San Francisco Bay and along the California coast. The animals out in Hawaii actually needed a lot more help than the ones in California. And we built a program of 40 plus years looking at the best way to save a species. And we realized that we couldn't just stay in San Francisco or along the California coast. We needed to get these animals the help they needed. So we started helping the Hawaiian monk seal. And we built a hospital on the Big Island, Kona, right near the airport there, to help save a species. And we see these little animals. So this one, just a couple months old, very similar to the elephant seals in kind of shape and size, but very underweight. So this is an animal we identified a few months old, should have been easily 150, maybe 200 pounds. Coming in at 40. But we know how to take care of them. The same way we gave Zaire all the food and nutrients and fish school, let's give Meliana that same situation. Took a lot longer for her, 6 months, but we released her with one of her kind of pals, and they actually both got little satellite tags. It's a little hard to see. And we were able to make sure that they were doing okay. In the case of Meliana, 8 years later, so actually around 4 months ago or so, when we think about it, we got this picture from some researchers. This is Meliana. This is her baby. So this is an animal a few months old, couldn't swim, couldn't hunt, couldn't eat, and was below birth weight. We took care of her. It took 6 months. 8 years later, she's got a healthy, thriving pup. This is a healthy pup that you're looking at here. And actually, around maybe a mile away on the beach from where this picture was taken, one of our other monk seal patients that we had rescued a year after Meliana had her first pup. And we saw her as well doing really well. So we know we're able to save this species, and it's made a really big difference. 10 years ago, when we started out there, the population was declining at 3% a year. They had dropped down below 1,200 animals. Now, it's increasing 4% a year. They're almost ready to be taken off the endangered species list, hopefully, if things continue ramping up. When we look at all the work, whether it's us or our partners out there, there are some great partners, groups like NOAA and others. 30% of all of the monk seals alive today are alive today due to conservation efforts. So it just goes to show how we can go from an individual that we're saving to actually a whole population that we're saving as well. And all of this, again, through an amazing community of support from people like you. All right, I've been talking for a long time, and I want to make sure that there's plenty of opportunity for questions, or I can just show you more cute pictures again. But what are ways that you can help? Because I imagine if you are willing to sacrifice coming into a darkened room when it is so beautiful outside today, you want to help. What are the ways to do that? I would say in this area, there are a few key things. The most is that you are so lucky here in Bolinas to share your shores with wild marine mammals. Be their heroes. Help give them space and help make sure others that are visiting that might not be as familiar with them are able to give them some space as well. Simplest rule is 50 feet, but anytime that you can see the animal and it's responding to you, you're probably too close. Keep your distance, but monitor it. If you think the animal needs help, give us a call. We are more than happy to get those phone calls. We'll ask some questions. If we get out there and it turns out that it's actually a healthy animal, we get to see a healthy animal. I spend all my time looking at sick ones. So we're not going to drive out in every situation just to look at a healthy animal. But if it turns out that animal's okay, perfect. Let's keep an eye on it, though. Let's make sure people give it that space and that it doesn't get hurt. Let's think about the ways that we can help that larger system as well. We can think local and help the local animals, but we can also address our plastic use and our fossil fuel use. And that's going to help these bigger issues as well. And I want to encourage you to think about how you are a leader in a wide number of communities. You have a very powerful voice and locus of control. Think about those communities. Maybe it's your home, maybe it's your workplace, maybe it's your church group, maybe it's your sports team, maybe it's your school. Whatever it might be, find people in that community, share that passion and interest, and know that there are tons of actions that we can do to address plastic and fossil fuel use. And if you want ideas, talk to us at the Marine Mammal Center. We've got an amazing website. We've got tons of resources we can provide for you. We want to help support you. You are the leaders in your community. If you want to stay connected with us, lots of different ways to do that as well. We've got a fantastic website. If you want to just ogle cute pictures of seals and sea lions with every moment of your day, we've got a great presence on social media. Go to our Facebook page. If you want to take a step, think about ways to reduce your plastic footprint. What I'm so impressed by our team is they've identified these really unique ways for things that are just ubiquitous in our households. Things like Ziploc bags. You don't need them. They're reusable bags that you can use time and time again. Things like these bees wraps to help wrap up bread or wrap up any type of sandwich. They're reusable and compostable after many months of use. All these things exist. We're not waiting for science to save us. So if you want some inspiration, you can always check that out. And then please, use that number, 415-289-SEAL. I've got a bunch of information you're welcome to take as well, things related to how to report an animal to us, to how to be an ocean hero and climate change, ocean trash, sustainable seafood, you name it. Feel free to take any of these things, and if there are things that we can do to help support in your community, let us know and we can get more stuff for you as well. But with that being said, I want to put up 2 pictures of elephant seals looking like they have questions. I want to say thank you for your time. I know it is really tough on one of the first beautiful days of the year to come and sit inside a room. But I hope that you've learned a few things. I hope that you feel inspired to help take action, and I hope that you connect with us moving forward so that we can help support you on that mission as well. So thank you all. And then please, there's still lots of time for questions, and I will answer everyone's questions. So yes, I saw your hand up. Go ahead first.
I'm Wendy, and I was the one that reported the whale, but I
Oh,
also, you didn't mention on Easter Sunday on April 9th, there was a harbor seal in distress on the, at the lagoon on the dock, and I ended up helping to rescue that one too. So her name is Mazel,